So last week was Easter, and we love Easter. We love the big story. We love hearing all the huge music and getting together and having a great time. But what's so interesting about the Easter story is that the first people who followed Jesus record so much of their doubt and their wondering and trying to figure out, how do we connect all of this into our lives? We don't understand. We don't get it. And so I think it's so great that we have these stories of Easter and post-resurrection. Because these first followers of Jesus, even though they saw him do amazing things, even though they saw him do these incredible miracles, even though they heard him time and time again talk about how he must give his life up and then be raised from the dead, did not necessarily connect that to their day-to-day lives. They really had a difficult time understanding who Jesus' identity was, who he really was, what he was really about, and why he was in the world, and why he had to die and be resurrected. They really struggled with a sense of mistaken identity. And all of us kind of struggle with this from time to time. Mistaken identity happens all the time. Anytime we're in a stressful situation, anytime something's going on, it's why so often when we do police lineups, or you see this in the movies, people have a difficult time identifying who actually did it, because when we're in a stressful situation, we have a difficult time identifying certain things. We have a difficult time seeing clearly, because the stress and what's going on inside of us affects the way that we see the world around us. Let me give you just an example of this. A couple years ago, this story happened, and I'm going to not show you the picture until after I tell you the story, okay? So I'm going to tell you the story, then show you the picture, just because, anyway, you'll see why. So my mom calls me. My mom lives right down the road here, and she calls me, and she says, "Adam, I need you to come over to the house." And I said, "Okay, why?" And she said, "There's a snake in my toilet." "A what?" She said, "There's a snake in my toilet." And I was like, "Okay, I'll be right over. Can't wait to deal with that." So I get over to her house, and I go into her bathroom, and in the toilet is a rat. I'm like, "Mom, that's not a snake. Like, it has fur. What snake has fur?" Like, but in the stress of opening the toilet lid and being like, "Oh wow, there's something there, and it's moving, and it's swimming, and it's doing lots of things." Like, that stress overwhelmed her a little bit. So she's like, "It's a snake." And even when I said it's a rat, she's like, "It's a snake." And I was like, "It's definitely not a snake. It is a rat." And so now I'm trying to figure out how to get this swimming rat out of the toilet without getting bit by this rat, because rats have diseases, I think. I don't know, maybe not. So trying to get this rat out of the toilet, we finally get it out of the toilet, and I realize it's not a rat at all. It's a squirrel. There's a squirrel in my mom's toilet. I don't know how the squirrel got in my mom's toilet. I don't know what it was doing. I don't know, why it thought it was a good day for a swim, but that was not the proper place for the squirrel to be. And I was a little worried when we got it out of the toilet. We put it in a bucket and or in a little box, and I was like, "Man, I'm going to have to give this squirrel CPR. Like, what does squirrel CPR look like? Is it just kind of..." Luckily, once we got it into the bucket, it started to kind of get some life back, and we took it outside and we let it free, and the squirrel walked into the woods, and everything was fine. And so, just so you know that I'm not making this story up, let me just show you what this actually looked like. It's a really visceral response. I've unlocked new fear for everyone, right? Like, squirrel in the toilet, that's a new fear for everybody now. But this, in the moment, when all of the stress of everything is happening, you struggle to identify what's really going on, what's really happening. Mom thought this was a snake. I definitely knew it wasn't a snake. I thought it was a rat. That wasn't a rat at all. It was a squirrel. A squirrel in the toilet. There's a lot of things going on in this story. But I think the good news is that even in the midst of all of the things that are happening around us, Jesus meets us right in the middle of all of those strange things. All of those strange stories, all of that stuff that we're dealing with, all of those things that we're thinking about, that we're wondering about in the world. Jesus meets us right there in the middle of all of that. In fact, right after Easter, we get this story that has incredible stress surrounding it. I mean, all of these disciples had followed Jesus for a number of years. They had given up their occupations to go after this rabbi who was saying amazing things and doing amazing things. And after they had crucified him and laid him in tomb, they weren't sure what to do. You can imagine the stress, you can imagine the worry, you can imagine the overwhelm, the disappointment that all of them were feeling. And so even on Easter Sunday, even as we unpack this story together, what we find out is that these disciples had already heard from the women who saw the empty tomb. They had already heard from these women that resurrection had taken place. And last week, if you remember the story that we told, we heard that the women saw these angels. The angels told them what happened. They went back and told the other disciples. And 10 out of 11 of them said, "You are crazy." These are two of those disciples who said, "You're crazy. You're crazy. All of this has happened. All of this has taken place. And that's the story that you want to tell me? That's too crazy to believe." It's in Luke chapter 24, starting in verse 13. It says this is on Easter Sunday. This is on the day of resurrection. Now, on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about all of these things that had happened. All of these things. How many of you walked into worship today with all of these things going on in life? I know I did. I've got lots of things happening in my life. And I imagine you do too. And these first disciples, these first followers of Jesus, they're leaving Jerusalem. Right? They're leaving the place where these women had just proclaimed, Jesus isn't in the tomb. The tomb is empty, so our lives can be full. And they're like, nah, we're out. It's too weird. It's too strange of a story. I mean, we thought, we hoped, we kind of thought that Jesus was going to be the one who overthrew Rome and brought us back into prominence, and we were going to have this big thing go on, and it was going to be exactly the way we had always hoped it would be. Now it's not. And so you know what? We're out. We're leaving. We're walking away. We're walking away. The story goes on. These guys are trying to move on. While they were walking and talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. So like the Greek is really explicit here. Like these guys are walking along, they're leaving Jerusalem, they're walking away from all of the other disciples that they had spent so much time with, that they had learned together with, that they had done all of these things with, that they had seen Jesus do amazing things with. They're walking away from all of that. They're trying to move on. They're trying to go back to those lives and the different things that they did before. Can you imagine trying to go back to the place that you were and explain to your boss, yeah, sorry about the 2-year absence. I was following this rabbi, but they crucified him, and so now I'm back. But Jesus shows up, and it says, the Greek is really explicit. It says, Jesus himself. Jesus showed up to them. The embodied, resurrected Jesus begins to show up to all of these disciples in different places and reveal himself to them. But their eyes were kept from seeing him. Their eyes were kept from recognizing him. These guys are trying to move on. They're trying to move on with life. But on that road of deep disappointment, they don't see Jesus because they're just thinking about what's going on in them. right? It's mistaken identity. They don't see him because of all the stress and all the feelings and all the stuff that they're dealing with. They're just trying to move on. And so the idea that Jesus would be walking with them is crazy to them. The fact that Jesus would meet them in their own doubt, in their own fear, the fact that Jesus would be on the road with them was incredibly outside of their ideas at that moment. They just had no concept that that could happen. They were just trying to move on as quickly as possible. And isn't this how we deal with so many of the difficult realities in our lives? So many of the things that we carry, so many of the things that we're wrestling with, we just want to move on as quickly as possible. We just want to deal with things and then just go. You know, the news changes every day. Something big happens and then we've moved on. We've moved on from whatever it is so quickly. We experience hurt and pain and loss, and we just want to move on. We don't want to talk about the things. We just want to move on from the things. I remember a number of years ago when my dad died, I drove down to Florida the next day and met with my older sister in the funeral home, and we're trying to make plans, and the rest of my family is going to come in, and so we're trying to do this as quickly as possible because we all come in from all different places. And I remember sitting there in the funeral home, and the funeral home guy was like, well, in order to get your dad turned around, there's going to be an expediting fee. It's like, an expediting fee? An expediting fee? Like, whatever, I'll pay it. I'll pay the expediting fee because we just need to move on. We just need to keep going. We just need to get this done so that we can go on to the next thing. And we take all of that stuff and we pack it down inside of us, and we never really deal with it. We just try to move on. But Jesus comes near to them and goes with them. And even though they were so focused on all of the things going on in them, all of their issues, Jesus still goes with them. Jesus comes near to them, and he himself goes with them. I think this is an incredible thing for all of us to consider, because this is our role in life as we walk with others, is being near to people in the middle of their own disappointment, being near to them in the middle of their own cynicism, being near to them in their own anger and frustration, being near to them in their own grief, just walking with people, even though we might not have all the right things to say, even though we might not know all of the things that are going on, but being willing to walk with people. The issues going on in most of our lives are so incredibly heavy. It's tough to notice anything outside of me. For most of us, the Holy Trinity is not Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's me, myself, and I. And all I can see is the stuff that I'm dealing with. I can't see anything outside of me, and so I mistake the identity of others and of Christ and God's work in my life, and I just can't see it. It's like this trend from the 1900s, back in the 1990s. There were these things that kind of took the whole country by storm called magic eyes. You ever seen these? Like in our mall, at the beautiful Countryside Mall, they had a whole store of magic eyes. Like you just walk into this store and it was always busy. It was always people in there just like, it was the strangest thing. And I could never see these. Like, I could never see the little magic eye things. I'd go into the store with friends. We'd go to the mall and we'd go into the magic eye store, and they'd be like, oh, it's a boat with some seagulls. I'm like, no, it's a blob. Like, I don't, like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you got to relax your gaze. No. Like, I can't. Now I can't relax because I'm thinking about relaxing, and I'm getting frustrated that I can't relax and I can't see the thing. And now I've got more stuff going on inside of me, and I'm less relaxed than I was before I couldn't see the thing in the blob. Again, all of these issues in our lives kind of compound and make it difficult for us to see anything beyond me. Their eyes were kept from recognizing him because they were so focused on their own feelings, their own doubts, their own concerns, their own struggles, their own cynicism about what had taken place in the world. And Jesus said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along? What are you guys talking about?" They stood still, looking sad. The Greek term is skathropos, which means stern or sour or dejected. They stood still, looking sad, looking dejected. And one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place in these days?" Do you still hear like the generalization around it? Like they don't want to pinpoint anything. They don't want to talk about their disappointment. They don't want to talk about their hurt. They don't want to talk about their cynicism. They don't want to talk about any of that stuff. They're like the things that have taken place, right? This generalized stress and anxiety that all of us feel. And we just like, oh, it's the things. But we don't want to drill down into those things because we've already moved on. I've already moved on. I don't need to deal with that. I'm not going to bring that back up. Are you the only one who doesn't know about the things that have taken place? And Jesus does the most incredible thing. He doesn't just let the moment pass by and go, "Oh, yeah, the things, yeah, big things. Whew. Don't know what to do about that, economy and, foreign policy and, oh man, schools, the things." Jesus goes, "What things? Tell me more." I don't know, I really want to hear. I really want to know what's going on. And these guys, they kind of open up. They begin to trauma dump on Jesus about Jesus, which I think is phenomenal. Jesus is always ready and waiting for you to talk to him about him or anything else for that matter. What things? What things? And they begin to talk about Jesus in the past tense. The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders had handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. They're frustrated with their institutions, with the people around them. And then they get to the heart of the matter, verse 21. But we had hoped. We had hoped that he was the one to redeem or to restore Israel. We had hoped. They're finally identifying their disappointment. They're finally identifying the fact that they can't hear the women's story because of their own cynicism, because this is the way that the world works. And the greatest cure for cynicism, look at this. Cynicism never changes the world. Cynics never change the world. They just tell you why the world won't change. And these guys are like, no, they crucified Jesus. Jesus is dead. And these women came back and they said, there was nobody in the tomb. And what could that mean? That couldn't mean anything. That's nothing. We're going back home and we're going to get back to work. Because if you're not careful, our response to cynics around us can deepen our own cynicism. The cure for cynicism is always curiosity. What things? Why do I feel the way that I feel as I'm walking? Why am I dealing? What's going on inside of me? That sense of curiosity begins to cure our cynicism because it helps us to open up to what God might be doing in the world. In fact, Jesus doesn't just show up and go, look, here I am. Because they weren't ready for that. To wrestle with their own feelings, their own thoughts, their own concerns, their own worry, their own cynicism, their own struggle. And then after Jesus listens well, it says that he begins to unpack the scriptures for them. He begins to tell them about the prophets and about Moses and about all of the scriptures in light of why Jesus had to die and be resurrected. He tells them all of the story of God so that they can frame their things in light of the greater things of God. He doesn't start there. He doesn't go, hey guys, remember I told you the thing and then you didn't do the thing and now I'm here to tell you about the thing? He starts with listening. Because God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. And so often we're so quick to solve problems and we just want to put a Band-Aid on it because we also want to move on. We've got to walk with people. Walk with people. And what they find out is that they don't have to continue down the road that they're on. They don't have to keep going in the direction that they're going, away from hope, away from the truth of Scripture, away from God's work in their lives, even in the most difficult of moments. They can actually change course and change direction and change their understanding because Jesus is walking with them in the middle of that hurt, in the middle of that pain, in the middle of that disappointment, in the same way he's walking with us. And in fact, the church, the very visible representation of Jesus here on earth, the body of Christ right here, right now, gets the same opportunity day in and day out to walk with people, to ask deep questions, to listen well, and then to help people see the bigger story of God's work in the world. It's what we did yesterday, the Lawrenceville Assistance Project. We walked with people. It's what we're going to celebrate this afternoon at our Parents First Initiative graduation, is we walked with people. It's what we do in our small groups and in our Sunday morning groups. It's these opportunities for us to walk with people. It's why connection really matters. You saw that in the video that we just played before the sermon, that connection really matters because it gives us opportunities to walk with people. And it helps them to understand what Jesus' identity really is. And as they sit down with Jesus and Jesus breaks bread around the table, their eyes are opened and they see the bigger story. And all of a sudden they head back to Jerusalem saying this, weren't our hearts burning as he told us the story of God's work in the world? Jesus longs for a church that's willing to be his hands and feet in the world. Jesus walks with us so that we will walk with others and help them to take their heartburn, all of their worries, all of their concerns, all of that heartburn that we feel about the things, and help God transform it into a burning heart that longs to see people transformed by the resurrected Jesus. I think oftentimes we mistake the identity of people who wrestle with faith as people who just have doubts and just have this and just have that. Really, most of them don't want to talk about the things that are really going on. They don't have the lens to see Jesus right there in the middle of it with them. And more often than not, it takes somebody like you to walk with them and to listen and to say what things so that God can use you and me and those people who haven't seen Jesus yet to walk with others. May God transform our heart burn into burning hearts to walk with people.